There are some people who just pretty much flat out belong in jail, such as these people. Number 7. Hillary Clinton. Depending on where you fall politically, Hillary Clinton is either a career public servant with a ton of valuable experience and talent, or she's a spawn from hell devoid of any humanity whatsoever and represents all that's evil and wrong in the world. There's no in between. But the truth most likely falls somewhere in between, such as a career politician who sometimes blurs ethical lines in order to achieve her goals. As most of you likely know, the former First Lady, U.S. Senator, and Secretary of State had some trouble sending a few thousand classified emails that contained sensitive information over unsecured servers during her tenure as Secretary of State. Because the mishandling of classified information is a federal crime, the FBI opened an investigation into the matter. On July 5, 2016, James Comey announced that the FBI's investigation had concluded that Clinton was extremely careless in handling her email system, but recommended that no charges be filed against her. Hillary's critics have argued that because of her status, she was given leniency by the FBI. After all, she did wipe her private server clean, even after Congress obtained a warrant for it. But she didn't really know how to use a computer. She's bad at stuff like that. Yeah. Then there's plenty of other past controversies, such as Whitewater when Bill was a governor and Travelgate when Bill was president. Oh, yeah, let's not forget about Benghazi disaster where 4 Americans were left dead. While conservatives may lament the fact that she'll probably never go to jail or face some sort of savage public execution, they can at least take some solace in knowing that she'll likely never be president. Number 6. Robert Durst. Robert Durst is a real estate heir who was the prime suspect in 3 different homicides spanning more than 3 decades. I mean, you'd think after the second homicide connected to you, cops would be on full alert, right? The first involved his first wife, Kathleen. The two were married in 1971, and after 9 years of a really unhappy marriage where Durst allegedly beat her, Kathleen disappeared in 1982. She had just asked Durst for a divorce, so he canceled her credit card and took her name off of a joint bank account. She went missing on January 31st, 1982, and to this day, no one knows exactly what happened to her. But it's known that Durst had been having an affair for 3 years at that point, and that he needed to avoid paying a $250,000 divorce settlement. Police suspected Durst but could never prove it. Then, in 2000, they reopened the case. Oddly enough, soon after the case was reopened, Durst's longtime friend, journalist Susan Berman, was found dead in her California home. Berman had provided an alibi for Durst when his wife disappeared in 1982. Durst sent her $25,000, but many believe he still killed her since she knew too much about Kathleen's disappearance. Durst took to hiding out in Texas and even posing as a woman to avoid police inquiries. While in Galveston, Texas, he was arrested for the murder of his elderly neighbor Morris Black in 2001, but was released on $300,000 bail. Come on, what are these guys doing? Durst went on the run, but was later arrested when he tried to shoplift some food. The cops found guns, weed, and more than $30,000 in cash and a map to the house of a friend of Kathleen's who publicly accused Durst of killing her. In 2003, he stood trial for killing Morris Black. Durst claimed he did indeed kill the man and even admitted to chopping him up and dumping his body parts in the bay, but claimed he did so in self-defense. Somehow, the prosecution couldn't convince the jury to convict him, and they voted to acquit him due to lack of forensic evidence. Susan Crist, the judge who presided over the trial, claimed that, quote, "You could see that this person knew what they were doing and that it was not a first time. The body was cut perfectly like a surgeon who knew how to use this tool on this bone and a certain kind of tool on that muscle. It looked like not a first-time job. That was pretty scary." However, the law might finally be catching up to Mr. Durst. In 2015, he was arrested and charged with the killing of Susan Berman. The trial is currently ongoing, and if you didn't know already, Durst was also the focus of an HBO miniseries called Jinx. Oh yeah, and just as a little cherry on top, he's also a person of interest in the cases of 3 teenage girls from 1971 and 2 from 1997. Has there ever been an open and shut case in someone being a certified serial killer? Number 5. Isaac Turnbaugh. Generally speaking, if prosecutors have a confession on hand, they can get a conviction, especially if the accused admits to murdering someone. Isaac Turnbaugh, however, is under protection from the Fifth Amendment. He's protected under a basic Fifth Amendment concept better known as double jeopardy, and prosecutors say their hands are tied, even if it is basically a complete outrage. Turnbaugh was acquitted of killing a coworker in 2004 in a case that was pretty bizarre to begin with. In 2002, while Turnbaugh was working at a restaurant in Waitsfield, Vermont, with Declan Lyons. Lyons was working outdoors when witnesses inside the restaurant heard a loud popping noise. When the waitresses went outside to investigate, they found an unresponsive Lyons on the ground with a gaping gunshot wound to the head. Police had no suspects in the case until the following month when Turnbaugh went to a party and allegedly told 6 friends that he had shot Lyons. One of the friends told Turnbaugh's mother, and she reportedly contacted the police, which prompted the trial. Police had no suspects until Turnbaugh's mother contacted them, saying her son had confessed to friends that he was the one who killed Lyons. While he was charged with the murder, most people who knew both him and Lyons didn't seem to think he did this, even after telling friends he did. His defense argued he was high on shrooms when he made his confession, and that in a schizophrenic episode of sorts, he also claimed to be involved with the 9/11 attacks. They also claimed he was mentally ill, and any sort of confession shouldn't automatically be believed. Without a motive, a weapon, or anything to contradict Turnbaugh's defense, the jury found Turnbaugh not guilty of the crime. However, soon after the acquittal, Turnbaugh called police to confess to the crime. But because of the double jeopardy provision in the Constitution, which basically prohibits the government from trying a citizen for the same crime twice, police couldn't do anything about it. While his attorneys argue that the confession is just another example of how mentally unstable he is and shouldn't be believed, prosecutors claimed he provided details that were consistent with how they believed the murder went down. Still, there's not anything they can do about it, and in all likelihood, Turnbaugh will remain a free man for the rest of his life. Number 4. Robert H. Richards. Robert H. Richards IV. The name kind of sounds like royalty, and it almost is. Robert is the great-grandson of Irene DuPont, the guy who founded the American conglomerate DuPont. The company is perhaps best known for being one of the world's largest chemical companies, and the company got its initial wealth as a gunpowder mill. Anyway, Richard is the heir to the massive family fortune. However, he's also a convicted child molester who's never spent time in jail. In 2009, this guy was arrested for molesting his then 3-year-old daughter. Richards never really denied doing this disgusting crime, and in fact, he pled guilty. He received what some might call a generous sentence of 8 years in prison. Then, a judge decided that he might not fare so well in prison, and to be fair, we all pretty much know how child rapists are treated in jail. Robert's sentence was suspended, and he was placed on probation. He was forced to do the standard register as a sex offender, barred from being around kids, and ordered to receive treatment, all of which he failed to do. Perhaps unsurprisingly, he was again accused of child rape in 2010. It was alleged that he had also molested his young son in 2005, but since prosecutors couldn't get enough evidence on him, so he was never charged with the crime. Supposedly, he failed a polygraph test when he was asked whether or not he molested his son. Taking that into consideration, along with the fact that he pled guilty to molesting his daughter, it doesn't take Sherlock Holmes to crack this case. But still, no jail time. The weird thing is that this case didn't really become well known until 2014 when Richard's ex-wife sued him for damages for the harm he caused to their daughter. However, since he's probably not going to jail, many critics have argued that if his parents weren't super rich with connections all over the place, the judge would have been much harsher on him. Let's not forget, he is a convicted child rapist after all. Number 3. Casey Anthony. When Casey Anthony was found not guilty of murdering her 2-year-old daughter Kaylee, the verdict pretty much pissed everyone off, and for good reason too. The prosecution had some seemingly airtight evidence against her, like the fact that the girl was missing for 31 days, or that there were reports of Casey's car smelling like a dead body. Then there's also the lies she told investigators, such as Casey telling detectives that Kaylee had been kidnapped by a nanny and that she had been trying to find her, too frightened to alert the authorities. She was charged with first-degree murder in October 2008, and she pled not guilty. On December 11, 2008, Kaylee's skeletal remains were found with a blanket inside a trash bag in a wooded area near the family home. After a 6-week media circus of a trial in 2011, Casey Anthony was found not guilty. Since the prosecution wasn't able to establish the exact cause of death, the jury opted to acquit her of the murder and child abuse charges. Well, with the prosecution seeking the death penalty, alleging Casey wished to free herself from parental responsibilities and murdered her daughter by administering chloroform and applying duct tape to her daughter's mouth, that was one hell of a break. The defense argued that Kaylee drowned in the backyard pool and that her body was disposed of by her grandfather, George Anthony. The defense contended that Casey lied about this and other issues because of a dysfunctional upbringing, which they said included sexual abuse by her father. The defense didn't present evidence as to how Kaylee died, nor evidence that Casey was sexually abused as a child, but challenged every piece of the prosecution's evidence, calling much of it fantasy forensics. On July 5, 2011, the jury found Casey not guilty of first-degree murder, aggravated child abuse, and aggravated manslaughter of a child, but guilty of 4 misdemeanor counts of providing false information to a law enforcement officer. With credit for time served, she was released on July 17, 2011. Obviously, all we talked about is extremely suspicious. Thanks to double jeopardy, she'll never be charged with this crime again. Number 2. William Leonard Dodson. Dogs. A man's best friend. They're the type of animals that would do anything for you if you properly train them. But of course, there's always the person who has mommy and daddy issues or are just born f***ed up in the head. Such as William Leonard Dodson, who tortured this poor dog. This sad excuse of a man decided to tape the mouth shut of this 15-month-old pit bull and just leave her to die in the summer of 2015. The dog's name is Caitlin, and she was discovered in North Charleston with her mouth taped so tightly shut that it cut off the circulation to her tongue. She was found when she showed up on someone's front porch. Thankfully, this resident didn't just leave Caitlin to be someone else's problem and called the cops, who called the vet. While the vet was able to rescue her, they were worried about her prognosis for a while. Thankfully, Caitlin made a full recovery and is thriving in a foster home. Although she still has the scars on her face, which she may have for the rest of her life. Some of her fur will grow back, but a lot of it is damaged beyond repair. The public donated tens of thousands of dollars for her medical treatment. The cops offered a $1,000 reward for any information on the person who committed this heinous crime, and their investigation led them to Dodson. This guy allegedly taped her mouth shut to keep her from barking, and according to witnesses, he laughed about it when confronted with charges. Now he faces not only animal cruelty charges, but was also charged with unrelated federal gun charge. There is a decent chance Dodson could spend the next 15 years in prison, a sentence he for sure deserves for animal cruelty. Number 1. Banking executives who caused the financial crisis. Remember that whole financial crisis from 2008? Yeah, the one where banks gave out ridiculous loans like candy to people they knew couldn't afford their McMansions. The one where many large banks were bailed out by the government? Yeah, that was a mess. Almost all of the people responsible for that debacle are walking around free as can be, although many people think they should be behind bars. Kareem Sarageldin, an executive at Credit Suisse, spent 30 months in prison for helping conceal the loss of hundreds of millions of dollars by Credit Suisse's mortgage-backed securities portfolio. But in terms of who's really responsible for the crisis, Sarageldin is a pretty small fish. He was the fall guy. He was the only banking executive who was given any jail time. Banking executives from major banks, such as the now defunct Lehman Brothers, Merrill Lynch, AIG, and several other big banks, actively concealed their losses. Combine that with continuing handing out subprime loans and a bunch of other shady business we don't really need to dissect, led to arguably the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. This man-made economic disaster, fueled by greed and bad decision-making from all parties involved, including the borrowers, should have resulted in some major crackdowns and heads should have been rolling. Instead, we get the Dodd-Frank reform and only send one relatively low-level banking executive to jail. Why didn't the government really go after Wall Street? I still think that seems like a fair question to answer. Here's what's next. When John Morgan and Ashley DeBow used social media to accidentally incriminate themselves, authorities probably figured out they weren't exactly dealing with Bonnie and Clyde. On August 24, 2015, Morgan barged into the savings bank in Asheville, Ohio, and handed the teller a note demanding some cash.